Now on 23.5, he launched one of the most innovative nonprofits dedicated to solving some of the most difficult problems on Earth. But now, space is where Peter Diamandis is setting his sights. He explains why he's now looking to the stars. Peter Diamandis, you know him as the founder of X Prize, and he's been offering millions of dollars for solutions to some of the world's worst problems. But in his new book, How to Make a Spaceship, Diamandis sets his sights on the stars. And he says it won't be long before we're planning our next vacations as a trip to space. Are we really going to have, truly, really going to have, space tourism where people will be able to go to space, buy a ticket, and go to space?
So the way I think of it, it's the next 20 years when the human race is becoming a multiplanetary species, right? 1,000 years from now, whatever we've evolved into, wherever in the universe we are, we're going to look back at these next 2 decades as the moment in time that we moved off the planet. And there's a number of things going on there. So to answer your question, yes. The beautiful thing is there's private capital, right? The capital of Bezos and Musk and Paul Allen and Richard Branson and Larry Page and many others, you know, doing what the government did not. And I think it's not the government's job to put you and me into space. It's commercial interests that should be doing that.
When we hear these conversations now, and you've just listed a handful of companies that are involved in it, and that's a real conversation for us today. But it wasn't in 1996. Yeah. And you launched an X Prize to try to make it a conversation, to say, and this prize, if I'm right about how it was kind of worded, was to find somebody who would build a rocket, who would be able to, a reusable rocket that would be able to carry people into space. 1996 seems like a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. The government engine for exploration sort of drifted away, and I wanted to go into space very badly. And when I gave up on NASA and the astronaut corps as being the mechanism to get there, I said, how else? And I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 17 companies over the years. I said, okay, let's do it privately. And I read Lindbergh's autobiography called The Spirit of St. Louis. It won the Pulitzer Prize back in 1954. It's an amazing book that chronicles his journey. And I didn't know that Lindbergh actually crossed the Atlantic in 1927 from New York to Le Bourget to Paris to win a prize. I thought he woke up one day.
I didn't know that either. I thought there was like just a personal goal. It was his own thing. And until I was reading about you, I didn't know that Lindbergh did it for, what was it, a $25,000 prize?
$25,000 offered in 1919, worth probably $5 to $10 million today. And it turned out 9 teams went after that $25,000. They spent $400,000, 16 times the prize money, all cumulatively to try and win it. I'm reading this, I go, that's it. I'm going to create a prize and get all of these, you know, fellow space cadets to try and, you know, build a rocket to get themselves and me into space. And so we had, in 1996, May 18th, we announced this $10 million prize. I didn't have the $10 million at the time. It's a different story. And it worked. We had 26 teams who spent $100 million going after the $10 million prize.
Wow. And you awarded that prize, it was years later. I think it was 2004?
2004, 8 years. 8 years from the time we announced it under the arch in St. Louis till the prize was won. It was Burt Rutan, backed by Paul Allen. Burt, one of the famed aviation designers of our time, backed by Paul Allen's money. Paul spent $26 million going after the $10 million prize. We're all optimists. And it worked. And Richard Branson came in and bought the rights to the winning technology.
And that's his big Virgin Galactic yeah. that is making its push to get people into space as well.
So ultimately, we have now at least three companies. Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, SpaceX, Elon Musk, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic, all 3 of them developing human capabilities. So we're going. Anyone who wants to go, you can go. That's the message. And I think we're going well within 5 years, for sure. And ultimately, it's just the beginning. Again, you've got the vision, the desire to put millions of people into space, and that's going to happen.
Did that X Prize, did that technology that came out of the 2004 award, Do you feel like that's going to be the technology that gets us there, or is it a place where that technology pushed someone else to come up with technology similar?
So I think it's the following. You know, the Orteig Prize, this $25,000 prize done in 1919 that was won in 1926. You didn't have the Ryan airmail aircraft that Lindbergh flew carrying people in New York to Paris. But when that prize was won, it changed people's perspective of what was possible, right? Within a couple of years of Lindbergh's flight, the number of pilots tripled, the number of airplanes quadrupled, the number of people buying tickets. So the X Prize was about the technology, and that's one sort of evolutionary branch, and that's what Virgin Galactic is doing. This feathered wing, this dropped from an airplane and using rockets to get from 60,000 feet up.
And it is beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful design. But I feel like what we did that was most important were two other things. One, we drove the regulatory conversation, right? It was the X Prize that drove the rules and regulations that the FAA now use to govern commercial spaceflight. The other thing we did was we got people excited, said it's not just for governments. You know, if you want to go, if you're a kid, if you're an adult, you can. And so it really launched this commercial space drive, and I think that's what I'm most proud about.
Now, there's a newer prize, much bigger. When I think of $30 million, I think of that as being a huge amount of money, but probably not when you're talking about putting people on the moon and getting to the moon. Let's talk about the latest one.
So we have launched and have active today about $120 million of prizes that have been awarded and or actively launched. Another $100 million of prizes are in various stages of development. The follow-on prize for space was a race to the moon. And so Google put up $30 million for the Google Lunar X Prize. And it's not for people, these are for robots. You have to build a robotic lander that you send to the moon, you land on the moon, has to move 500 meters and send back YouTube videos and photos. And it's about getting to the moon cheaply, recurrently. One of the teams, I was just at Google Zeitgeist with the teams there, one of the teams said their goal is to send a lander on the moon recurrently for $10 million a shot. Right, so it's not $1 billion for a rover on the moon, it's $10 million. And the goal here is that private industry can do this repeatedly, cheaply. And it's really about expanding the human sensor network and ecosystem and to explore. One of my companies, Planetary Resources, is focused on going to near-Earth asteroids. So we're starting to see this commercial drive of opening up the space frontier.
And when we have that, regular travel to the moon, and I guess if the robots are doing what they're doing out there, do we later see that being something that we're going to put people on, we're going to colonize, we're really going to go back to the moon with people? Is that the eventual plan?
Yeah, the goal is we are going to be sending people to the moon and to Mars, right? I mentioned Elon Musk is scheduled to send a lander, unmanned lander, to the Martian surface using his systems in 2 years' time, and he wants to put a human on Mars by 2024. Right? This is like 8 years out. This is like right now. It's part of the human expansion. We are becoming a multiplanetary species, and we will move on to these places. It's no different than what happened 500 years ago, when the Europeans looked to the New World and said, we're going to go and colonize. Same thing is happening. We as humans tend to repeat cycles over and over again.
The X Prize may have helped private space travel get off the ground, but that's not really all it's done. The competitions have launched some major innovations. So next, take a look at some of the new challenges X Prize is tackling.
$10, $20, $30 million and challenge entrepreneurs around the world and say, I don't care where you went to school, what you've ever done, you solve this problem. You meet these concrete objectives and you win the cash. We all win as a society. At X Prize, we are looking at what are the world's biggest problems, right? Water, food, energy, healthcare, all of these things. And how do we launch a global X Prize, $10, $20, $30 million, and challenge entrepreneurs around the world and say, I don't care where you went to school, what you've ever done, you solve this problem. You meet these concrete objectives and you win the cash. We all win as a society, right?
Yeah.
We've got the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. If you remember, sort of Bones or Dr. McCoy from Star Trek. He'd had that device that said, "Sam, yeah, you're healthy, you're doing great." So we want to bring that tricorder into existence, and Qualcomm funded a $10 million Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. Build a handheld device.
And you're going to call it a tricorder.
It is a tricorder. It's a version 0.9. But it's for a mom or a dad at 2 in the morning when your kid is sick. You can diagnose 15 disease states. Eventually, the ability to diagnose a person is going to be fully autonomous. It's not going to be, you know, the old stage house call with a doctor with their stethoscope around their neck. It's going to be a device that is measuring what's going on in your body and giving you a definitive answer. This is what you have. This is what you do. We have a global Learning X Prize that Elon Musk funded $15 million for a Android piece of software that can take a child anywhere in the world from illiteracy to basic reading, writing, and numeracy in 18 months. We're running a massive experiment.
Wait a minute.
In Tanzania.
That's wild.
Yeah, so imagine giving a child in Tanzania an Android tablet with software on it, and it takes them from not knowing reading, writing, arithmetic to basic reading, writing, arithmetic in 18 months on their own. No literal adults, no schools, right? We had 600-odd teams enter this competition. We're down to 120 developing software. We're now down to 5. Google's given us 8,000 tablets. We're going to put those 5 finalists onto the tablets, deliver them into Tanzania, and measure what happens to the students, the families, the villages over that period of time, and then open source the software.
You start a lot of conversations based on these prizes. And these days, do you like talking about the fact that your family was from Greece? Do you like talking about that you were an immigrant to America, and do you like having that conversation? Because it seems like it's a big conversation now.
I'm proud of my Greek roots. I think of the journey my parents took from a small island in Greece, Lesbos, to New York, to becoming successful Americans, and you know, my dad was a physician, and that journey was so extraordinary. It's like the journey I would have going from here to Mars. And it was impactful for me in my life. Julian Guthrie, who is the author of this biography she's written about me, How to Make a Spaceship, and the book starts with me, age 8, in front of the television watching the Apollo 11 moon landing. And I basically went through 2 parallel lifetimes. I was, in my heart and soul, I was committed to space. Star Trek and Apollo sort of, you know, got me going. But my family was all in medicine. It was sort of like, I told my mom I wanted to be an astronaut. She goes, "That's nice, son. You're going to be a doctor," right? And so throughout school, I had, you know, I was biology and medicine, but also aerospace engineering and running space and rocket companies during medical school. And it was a crazy journey. And she did a beautiful job with this book.
When you look at your life, is it the way you pictured it being when you were a kid, or is it?
Man, I'm having a blast. I'm having an absolute blast. It is. Listen, I thought in some ways we would be a lot farther in different areas like the space arena. It's taken longer to get to the point where we now have these commercial companies opening up space. But I have daily conversations about mining asteroids. I mean, you cannot have more fun than that, right?
Fantastic.
It's crazy.
I asked that because in this show, a lot of people who ask questions after the interviews are like, how can I do that?
Right. And so that's a great question. And I tell students around the world, whether there are students that are 18 or students that are, you know, 58, if you don't know what your passion is, if you don't know what your purpose and mission in life is, that's your #1 responsibility. Go and find it. Because I guarantee you, the stuff that I've done, if I wasn't in my heart and my soul passionate about making those things happen, I would have given up 100 times on the way to success, right? And so it was only because I knew that's my purpose on this planet. This is why I'm here, that I kept going, and these companies were overnight successes after 10 years of grueling hard work, right? So that's my hope for the book, that it will become an inspirational lesson for others to follow their dreams.
The Qualcomm tricorder device, besides holding a tricorder, would be the coolest thing in the world. Diamandis says it would revolutionize home healthcare, especially in remote areas. 7 teams vying for the $10 million prize. The winner expected to be announced early next year.